we're going to talk about what the deal is with a negative underneath the square root. So up until now, we have not been able to deal with a negative in the square root in any math class because we were just like it gives us an error. So like as an example, if I go to my calculator and I type in square root of negative 16, it gives me an error. All right, it might say something about non-real answer or whatever. Not all calculators say that, but I can't get an answer to it. All right, so we've had that problem before. And now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how I can use what we did in the last lesson, which is simplifying the radicals, and how I can put it together with this to get an answer to that question so that if I needed an answer, I can get one. So what happened is at some point, a math person, mathematician of some sort, which I don't know who it is because I didn't, in history of math, when you're take a history of math class, you tend to do projects on certain people. I didn't do this. I didn't do this one. And I've never looked it up before. So somebody decided we need an answer to this question so that we can do more math. All right, so that we can understand something a little different. So they came up and basically said the problem is that we don't know what the square root of negative 1 is. If I assign that a value, then I can answer all these questions that I couldn't answer before. All right, so that's what happened here. We just assigned this I and said I is the square root of negative 1, and then it allowed us to open up and do all this other math that we couldn't do before. All right, so I is simply defined as the square root of negative 1. So what this is going to let us do is it's going to let us take something like square root of negative 16 and be able to figure it out. Now we're going to have to do it a little bit by hand because the calculator doesn't do imaginary numbers very well. There is a mode you can put it in to do it, but it's not gonna help you because you got to show your work when you're doing these. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what we did last lesson, where we split radicals up into factors, and we're going to use that to get an answer to this question. So we're going to take square root of negative 16 and we're going to split it into square root of 16 and square root of negative 1. All right, because what I know is that square root of negative 1 is I, square root of 16 is 4. All right, so it's 4i. All right, and that's going to be the only difference between square root of 16 being 4 and square root of negative 16 is going to be this little I floating around. All right, and anytime you have a negative, you can factor a negative 1 and get an I, and then you can answer the question when you're doing something like this. So take your time, practice. It's not that different than what we did last time.